The other day, I once again headed up to Mom's in Foxborough, Massachusetts to test ride a motorcycle. This time I decided to try the all-new 2025 Indian Scout as it has been redesigned and upgraded. The Scout line is Indian Motorcycle's most successful offering, and up to the 2024 models, they basically remained unchanged from the original reintroduction back in 2015. These bikes originally offered a 1133cc V-twin engine that produced 100 horsepower and 72 foot-pounds of torque. I got to test ride the 2015 Scout, and while I liked its peppy engine, I was not a fan of the harsh suspension. I was hoping that with this new model for 2025, the suspension travel would be improved. For 2025, Indian is offering the Scout in several different trims, including the Scout Bobber, the Scout Classic, the Sport Scout, the Super Scout, and the very cool-looking 101 Scout. For this test ride, Mom's had the Scout Classic set up as a demo, which retails for $13,999 and now tips the scales at 542 pounds in running order. That is 19 pounds lighter than the 2024 model at 561 pounds. The new Scout now produces 105 horsepower and 82 foot-pounds of torque from its 1250cc engine and carries 0.1 more gallons of fuel in its 3.4-gallon tank. The one thing I am discouraged about is that, according to the Indian website, the rear suspension travel on the 2025 Scout Classic has been reduced from a very ineffectual 3 inches of travel down to only 2 inches of travel. I mean, seriously, 2 inches of rear suspension travel. The demo unit I was riding came with ABS as standard feature, but nothing else. If you want cruise control, traction control, and 3 riding modes, you can jump up to the Scout Classic Limited for $14,699. Even more features like a 4-inch TFT display with ride command, GPS, customizable gauges, and keyless ignition can be found on the Scout Classic Limited Plus technology. And all of that will cost you $15,699. And of course, there are many other extras that you can add to customize your ride. As far as looks of the bike goes, I really like what the designers at Indian did by smoothing out the lines of the bodywork and the engine. I think the 2025 model is an altogether nicer looking motorcycle than the previous version. But those are just cosmetics. What about the ride and performance? When I do these reviews, I always try to be fair and judge each bike by its intended purpose and target audience. While I started out as a cruiser rider for the first 12 years after returning to motorcycling in 2006, I have since moved over to adventure and more sport-oriented motorcycles. I like the more upright riding posture of the ADV bikes, as well as the responsiveness, engine performance, and better brakes. Sometimes jumping to a cruiser seems like a step backwards, and I try to be cognizant of that fact while giving my opinion. I am also very thankful that Mom's allows me to ride and review their bikes without expecting me to give everything a big thumbs up. Can you see where this is going?
What the fuck happened? Low oil. Uh-oh.
When I first got on the 2025 Scout Classic, I pulled out, slowly making my way to the end of the parking lot in first gear. The bike seemed like it was struggling and it quickly stalled. I switched the bike off and then back on again and was able to get it going again, but it was kind of weird because I was giving it plenty of gas. Now fortunately, this kind of issue did not happen again during the test ride. Now, although I mentioned to the salesperson Eric that the bike felt kind of lumpy at idle, even at 1250 RPMs, I thought maybe the rear cylinder was turning off at the stoplights, but he assured me that this does not happen. He explained that this is the way they are now coming from the factory. Is Indian trying to reproduce that potato sound and feel from Harley Davidson? Along with this lumpy idle, I found the 2025 Scout to be very sluggish when pulling out from a light or riding at normal back road speeds, between 2,500 to 3,000 RPMs. It was only when I took the bike up over 4,000 RPMs that it started to open up and become fun to ride. The peak torque of the 2024 models, that is the previous model, came on at 5,900 RPMs, whereas the new 2025 engine produces peak torque at 6,300 RPMs. So okay, I guess this new bike is meant to be ridden at higher RPMs than most cruiser riders would typically prefer, but still, that early rev range is just kind of milquetoast. I am out today riding this bike. This is the 2025 Indian Scout, right? Newly redesigned for 2025. I really like what they've done with the aesthetics of this bike. It basically still looks like a Scout, but they've kind of smoothed out the lines a little bit, again, which I like, right? They've also upgraded the engine here. A little bit larger displacement, a little bit more horsepower, and again, smoothed out the lines, again, that I like, right, aesthetically. However, I have to say something here. I very rarely give a motorcycle a bad review here. I mean, there are always things I like and don't like, but this bike, I just am not enjoying all that much. I have to say it's a little sluggish. I was expecting it to be peppier than the older version, and maybe it's just the demo unit here, but it seems a little sluggish riding around here on the back roads. Now, the bike does open up once you get up to about 3,500, 4,000 RPMs, and then the bike really picks up and it's nice and peppy. But underneath that, it's kind of just a slug. And I'm not a cruiser guy anymore. I haven't ridden a cruiser for a few years now. I did for 10 years, on my Victory Vision. But I'm, not enjoying this forward foot position so much anymore. After about 10, 15 minutes, my back starts to feel it immediately. And I'm not super happy with this seat. So maybe I'm not the guy to be test riding this bike because, again, I don't ride these things on a daily basis anymore. But for me, again, overall, it's just that kind of sluggish laziness. Now, I know that there are probably people who really like that and enjoy that. So if you're into cruiser stuff, don't let my opinion sway you. Go out and definitely ride this. And if you're in Massachusetts here or in the New England area, definitely go up to Mom's and check them out, and they'll let you test ride these units. Now, at first I thought, well, maybe I have it in rain mode or something like that. But this particular bike is a base unit, and at least I cannot find a mode button anywhere on the bike. So I'll have to ask when I get back to the shop. But it seems to be just the way the bike comes, so. Another thing I did not like about the new Scout is the riding position. Yes, I know I am used to having my feet underneath me and sitting more upright, but my back and butt were hurting within the first 10 minutes of the ride. Sorry, I am just not a fan of this feet forward riding posture. And speaking of comfort, remember I mentioned that huge amount of rear suspension travel, a whole whopping 2 inches? Well, going over bumps on this bike sucks. Sorry, I just cannot sugarcoat it. Only buy this bike if you are young and supple. It is not good for old, brittle bones. All right, so I'm back here at Mom's. I dropped the bike off, or I'm going to drop the bike off here. Threw my gear in the truck. Let me be honest here and say, this is the first bike in a while that I've test ridden that I wanted to be off, right? Again, my back's hurting because of the position. Going over bumps on this thing, especially when you're going 60 miles an hour or so, oh my God, it's like riding a brick. So, needless to say, I'm not really thrilled about this bike. Now, the bottom line here is that this is one of the only bikes I have ever test ridden that I wanted to get off as soon as possible. However, don't let my old age and my opinions sway you. Go in and test ride it for yourself. Eric and the crew of Moms in Foxborough will be happy to let you take one for a ride and find out if it's right for you. Ride safe and keep squeezing your lemon.